Welcome to The Trauma Teacher, the podcast dedicated to transforming therapists into masterful healers with confidence, creativity, and clarity. I'm Janice Holland, and I'm here to guide you through the journey of becoming the therapist you've always envisioned, helping you step into your full potential and make a profound impact on your clients' lives. Each week, we'll explore powerful strategies, share inspiring stories, and dive deep into the tools and mindsets you need to elevate your practice and create lasting change for both you and your clients. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, The Trauma Teacher is your go-to resource for overcoming challenges, embracing your unique healing artistry, and thriving in your career without sacrificing your well-being. So if you're ready to become the confident, creative healer you were meant to be, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode. I'm excited to talk with you today. I do have a little bit of a cold, so I've got my hot tea here, and I'm hoping that my voice will last throughout this podcast. So today we're going to talk about overwhelm, and particularly our own overwhelm as therapists, as healers working with people. There's a lot of different reasons why we can get overwhelmed in session. It can be, maybe a client comes in and they present you with an issue that they're working through or that they've experienced, and it's maybe just outside of our comfort zone. It may be outside of the things that we typically hear or manage or deal with. And so it can cause us to feel a little bit overwhelmed, unsure where to start. Imposter syndrome can certainly kick in those situations, right? And we just kind of are like, what do I do? Another reason could be it kind of similarly, like sometimes I have clients come in and they are, they're just very, a little more self-aware and pretty articulate, and so they can just unload their whole story and just go on and on and on about all these different things, past, present, that they've experienced, that they're working through, that they know they need to work through, and it's it's kind of this attitude or spirit of, I'm finally in therapy, here's all my shit, here's all my, everything I've dealt with it, and then for us, it can be like, okay, like it can feel a little overwhelming. Like, where do I start? What do I do? I don't know where to begin. Should I start with the here and now stuff? Should I start with the past stuff? What should I do? And the third topic that really came to mind, and something that I definitely deal with, is if there's a lot going on in your personal life. So if I'm recording this podcast in the time period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so obviously that time period is just, there's a lot going on for most of us personally, our kids, schools, there's concerts and programs and end of semester ceremonies and all that stuff that we have to book in after hours. And then typically we have clients who crisis kind of comes to the forefront for them, either stuff going on in the quarter, at the end of the quarter stuff at work, or they're anticipating being with family, or maybe they just were with family at Thanksgiving, and they I don't know, there's just a lot going on, right? Like, people have a lot happening in their lives. We have a lot happening in our lives. Definitely like the time period when I was going through my divorce, and it was just so draining and so exhausting. Or if you've experienced a recent death of somebody that you really care about, or your marriage is on the rocks, or you have a child who is having a really hard time, whatever it is, we're people and we have stuff going on in our personal life. And then it can feel really overwhelming to sit in session with somebody and try to focus and try to pay attention and really be present with them and help them. And it can really challenge our capacity and challenge how we are able to help and support. And so I just wanted to, first of all, acknowledge that this happens. It happens to the best of us. It happens to all of us. And we can prepare. There are some strategies and mindsets that we can put in place and keep at the forefront of our practice, so that we can still serve in a very high capacity to the people that we are working with, and that we are, wanting to help and heal and transform. So where I want to start is talking a little bit about mirror neurons. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I have a a basic level understanding of how mirror neurons work and what they are, but I just find it so powerful and so important because especially when we're stressed, a lot of times we ourselves kind of go into this space of wanting to control more or wanting to have really specific outcomes or to understand, have a very we kind of convert to a more linear line of thinking, and it's a form of trying to create safety, right? So if we have a lot going on in our personal life, if we're personally overwhelmed, then we can kind of forget some of the basic principles of how therapy works and how powerful it is to just be in the presence of somebody else who's present. And we can start going into task mode or fix it mode. And that alone can begin to erode some of the process that's really necessary for our clients to heal from. And this can also trigger if we're in session with somebody, maybe we're doing okay, but we are overwhelmed by the what they present us with, or we're overwhelmed with the amount of content they come in with and, where to start, then we can feel pressure that we have to perform, or we feel pressure that, oh gosh, I can't handle this, or I'm not good enough for this, I haven't been trained well enough for this, whatever it is, which all may not necessarily be true. That could just be your imposter syndrome kicking in or your fear showing up, and we kind of try to control and make things linear. So back to mirror neurons. The way mirror neurons work is, however, here's the way I see it. We all have an aura that we are, that is around us and that we present in any space that we're in. But somebody with the strongest, whoever is the most grounded in the aura that they're in. So let's say somebody is highly anxious, highly frustrated. They have like a really strong aura of anger or anxiousness or frustration. If they are in the room and that is the most powerful aura in the room, then everyone will begin to mirror that energy, right? They'll begin to, so often you think about, you've heard the phrase, if mama isn't happy, nobody's happy. So if mama is the strongest aura in the room and her energy is frustrated or angry or mad, then it's going to cause everyone in the room to feel anxious, right? Because that is how mirror neurons work. So what that means for us as therapists, as healers, is it's that much more important for us to be really, really centered and grounded in the aura of calm, centeredness, connectedness, because when we are grounded in that energy, and that's the aura that we're presenting in the space that we're in, then whatever our clients are feeling, if they're anxious, if they're angry, if they're sad, if they're depressed, if they are dissociated, like whatever it is they're presenting with, our presence calms them. Our presence centers them, but only if we're really grounded and centered in that presence ourselves. So if a client comes in who's highly anxious or overwhelmed and starts spilling everything out, and we're not grounded in our own centeredness, then we will get caught up, then their aura is stronger, and we will get caught up in their anxiety. We'll get caught up in their overwhelm. And that can sometimes really trip us up in our minds and we lose access to the fullest capacity of our training and of who we're capable of being with people. So in a moment, I'm going to talk a little bit about what to do when that happens, because it's not really a matter of it never happening. It will happen. We all have our guard down sometimes. We all show up in session a little tired. Like I said, there may be a lot going on in our personal life, and so we're not as grounded and strong and centered as maybe we normally are. And if we have a client who comes in with really big energy and whatever they're dealing with, then they can be the most powerful energy in the room, and we will begin to mirror them rather than they begin to mirror us. All right, so I'll talk about what to do about that in a moment. But before I do that, I just want to reiterate the importance of taking care of yourself and really managing your energy, managing your time and space and capacity during this time of year especially, but at any time, like what is my capacity and how do I manage that? Because if you don't, then that's when we begin to follow our client's energy rather than them following us. So one more thing I want to point out about mirror neurons, which is really powerful, I believe, for those of us who are healers, because most of us who are healers have been through trauma. That's why we're drawn to this profession, and that honestly, that's why we're so good at what we do, is because we've been through it and we understand it. But people who've experienced trauma often have a very hypersensitive mirror neuron response, right? So what that means is we are very, very good at not just reading, but absorbing energy in the room. And it's a part of a safety survival mechanism that we developed very early in our lives. So if you grew up in a home where it wasn't emotionally safe, then you are going to know how to read and absorb the emotions of everyone around you. And it's a way for you to keep yourself safe. And it's a way for you to create stability for yourself, right? So many of us unconsciously do that. That ability, in a lot of ways, is what helps us be really good at what we do. We read people very, very well. We understand the nuances and the meaning of what they're trying to communicate without them having to fully communicate it. And often we're not too, like, big topics don't really scare us. Like, somebody can come in and say some really big things that have happened to them, horrible things that have happened to them, overwhelming situations that they've been in, and we can handle it. We can manage it. We have capacity for it because that world is not really foreign to us, right? So that there's a lot of really good things about us having been through trauma and doing the work that we're doing, but one of the things we need to be really careful of is not absorbing, is learning the difference between observing and absorbing. Learning the difference between observing and absorbing. So we can observe the energy, we can understand their big energy, understand their overwhelm, understand their anxiety, really hold space for that and have empathy for that, but not absorb that energy, which is very different, right? And so it takes some really intentional effort initially because it happens so unconsciously for those of us who have been through trauma. And conversely, our clients often will do the same. So I remember when I was going through my divorce, there were some hard days. There were some days where it was really hard for me to be present just based on some events that had happened before and after. So, I'm dealing with all of the reality of that between sessions, but trying to be really present. But my clients, my complex trauma survivors could feel that I was off, and they often would say something. They didn't necessarily know what was off or why it was off, but they understood, and because they were absorbing the energy that I was showing up with, right? And there's nothing we can necessarily do about that. We're humans. We're not perfect. Things are going to happen. But I would just redirect, and help them understand that the session is about them. What to do in those situations is a whole different podcast. But my point in bringing this up is mirror neurons are happening. It's not something we can control. It's happening. So for us to be aware that it's happening, which helps us ground even more into our presence and our aura so that we invite the client to calm. And, research tells us there's different numbers out there. The research article I read most recently is that 70% of the process for our clients is based on positive human regard, presence, our ability to hold space, stay calm, be just present with our clients and listen to them is 70% of the healing process. All right, so that alone is enough. This is a reminder for you that you don't have to know it all, you don't have to be it all, you don't have to have all the answers, you don't have to have it figured out, but you do need to just be calm and be present and available and open to wherever the path that the session may lead. So this is something that I really work with my interns that I'm working with because understandably, they're new to this process, they're new to sitting in front of people, and it can feel like, okay, I need to have a plan for what to do. So they get the intake paperwork, they get an understanding of what the client's coming for, and they want to create a plan for how the session's going to go. And I help them create that plan just because having a plan helps calm our nerves. Having a plan helps them, feel like that they can show up and do a good job. But over time, the plan becomes less, the way I see it is like this fading out of the plan and the fading up of just presence and calm and comfort. And you have training, you have tools, you have all the resources you need. Like, this is why, I offer a certification in the trauma model, and it's so powerful to have those tools, to have the research-based information, to have really good, solid, grounded framework in what is happening with people and what's going on with people. But you're not leading with those tools. You're leading with just your presence and your calm aura. And then you can draw upon those tools to really support and help people through session. But holding the space where they are holding themselves, right? We're going to be present with them and create a really comfortable space for them to fall apart if they need to fall apart, and just see and experience their real authentic emotions, their real authentic self. But we're not going to hold that for them or pick it up for them, right? That's really stepping into the role of a rescuer. A rescuer in the drama triangle feels like they can't hold it. Oh, this is too big for them. They can't do this. They need somebody to hold it for them. They need somebody to take over. They need somebody to tell them what to do or how to do it. And so when we switch unconsciously into that mindset of I need to take on my clients, take responsibility for their healing. I need to take responsibility for their growth. I need to take responsibility for them. That's the role of a rescuer. And what it does is it unconsciously keeps them in the role of a victim. I mean, if we have the mindset or the energy of, I have to show you the way, I have to fix this for you, then they don't have a choice but to think unconsciously. Again, it's usually the subtle energetics of it, of like, I can't handle this. This is too big for me. I need her or him to manage this for me. I'm going to have to, they have to hold it for me. And initially that feels really good. It feels really good because we feel needed. We feel important. We feel like, I'm going to hold this trauma for them, and I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to take care of them because this is really big and they can't handle it. And so it feels good to be that savior, so to speak, to be that rescuer. And for them, like, thank God I don't have to carry my burden. I don't have to deal with this. She'll handle it for me. She'll take care of it for me. So initially it feels really good. And again, this isn't like overt conversations we're having. It's the energy of the session that's happening. But what happens over time is it's going to break down. It's going to fall apart because no one can handle somebody else's pain except for them. I can help somebody understand their pain. I can help them process their pain. I can help them create more space within themselves to accept it and hold it, but I cannot take it. Even children, I cannot take it from them. And that's probably the hardest part about working with children is, being face to face with a child who's being asked to hold an incredible amount of suffering and pain and chaos and abuse and neglect and trauma, right? But this is their journey, and they have the resources within themselves to manage their journey for themselves. I know it to be true to the core of who I am. Each person on this planet has capacity to hold and manage and walk through and heal from any form of suffering. Any form of suffering. And there are hundreds of books out there of people who have done it. I know it to be true, right? I just know it instinctively in the core of who I am as the spirit being that I am, but I also know it because I've read it over and over and over and over again from people who have survived the impossible and who have held the impossible for themselves. And so what an honor it is for us as healers, as therapists, to hold a space for them and to energetically teach them that they have the capacity to heal from this. They have the capacity to hold this pain within them and to transmute it, to metabolize it so that it no longer clouds and is the leading energy of their life, but they can metabolize it and transform it so that they are able to just experience life as their authentic self. All right. So not stepping into the drama triangle is so important. But when we get overwhelmed, when we feel like, wow, this is so big, I don't know, like if you don't know to the core of you that every person is capable of handling the situation that they're in, then you will try to take it from them. So if you have a wife whose husband is emotionally abusive and she feels trapped and you don't think that she has the capacity to handle that situation, then you're going to try to hold it for her. You're going to try and relieve her of that pressure and of that stress, and you are going to make a mess of the situation because we cannot hold other people's pain for them. We just can't do it. And it makes it easier in the moment if we do, because like I said, it relieves the moment, but it creates a long-term strategy of more pain and more chaos, because over time, they still haven't built the capacity to manage their life and to hold the pain within their life and to metabolize that energy and transform it. We're holding it for them, but really we're not meant to hold it. And then if you start taking on more and more people's stuff, then you begin to kind of break down, and there's just no way to maintain that strategy over time. So getting overwhelmed is usually the first step, and that fear steps in where we go, oh my gosh, this is big. I need to help them. I need to relieve them. I need to make this better for them. I need to make them feel better. They're here for me to help them feel better. And if we adopt that mindset and take it, then we are going to create a mess. We just are. So being really, really clear in what they need actually is for us to stay calm and stay present and hold space and believe that they are whole and resourceful within themselves, and we're going to inspire that energy within them. And we do that by holding that belief, holding that line, holding space and kindness and grace and understanding. While they may get really frustrated with us, they may blame us, they may accuse us of not doing something, but we have to be really grounded and solid in that perspective in order to allow the transformation within themselves that they need so that they can hold the life that they've been given, that they can create capacity within themselves to hold the truth of their life and to be present with the truth of their life, because that's the only way they can, like I've said, metabolize it and really step into their power from it. All right, so to recap, this piece of it is to being really, really, really self-aware of breaking the cycle within yourself of absorbing other people's emotions. We can understand their emotions, we can feel their emotions, we can hold space for their emotions, but we're not going to absorb them and make them our own. They are theirs. They're theirs for them to hold and to keep and to translate, transmute, metabolize, however you want to say it, but that energy is theirs, and we're not going to absorb it for us and step into the role of a rescuer, right? And when we do that, the boundaries tend to take care of themselves, because when we don't do that and we're a rescuer, the boundaries get really blurry. We over-identify with our clients, and it can, like I said, take a really long term. It can create a real mess and often perpetuates a cycle of pain and suffering for our clients, of one other person who dropped the ball, one other person who let them down, one other person who disappointed them and wasn't able to follow through because we weren't meant to in the first place. We tried to do something we weren't meant to do in the first place, and it never works out in the long run. Okay? So when we stay grounded, everything changes. We stay rooted in our calm, and then we set the tone for the entire session. Right? So clients can pick up on that. The mirror neurons are there, so they begin to mirror that and find stability inside the sessions rather than rescuing inside the sessions, which, like I said, initially can feel really good, but it also has a lack of stability in it because it's not energetically how we were designed to operate. Okay. All right. So a couple questions you can ask yourself to see if you are over-identifying with clients is, do you feel emotionally exhausted after sessions? Now, a little caveat with that is, if you have a lot going on in your personal life and it's taking a lot more effort to be really present with clients, then it may, in those situations, even though you are energetically holding the boundaries, you may just be really tired because it's taking more from you to be present. So that's a little bit different than if you think back over the last year and all your time with clients, and especially towards the end of the week, if you are just really drained and exhausted and are not able to really engage much in a personal life, and that's a red flag that you are probably absorbing more of your client's energy than you need to be. It's just happening organically. It's happening unconsciously because it's something you learned how to do at a very early age. So it's something you can begin to pay attention to and be aware of, and think about how you want to create more of a boundary there moving forward so that you're not spending all of your energy in session. Right? If you're thinking a lot about your clients outside of session, if you're thinking, find yourselves being really involved in their lives and wondering what's going on and how is it going and what are they doing, and wanting to know, like, if they come into the next session, you want to know all the details about everything that happened, you're over involved. All right. They're paying us for that hour. And there may be some times where it's really beneficial to them to give us some of the details of conversations that happened and the dynamics between them, and, if they're trying to work on some relationships in their current life. But if we're just wanting to indulge ourselves with understanding what's happening in their life and the details of what's happening in their life, that's about us and not really about them. And, you're probably not holding that boundary line very well. There's a couple, I have a few more. I have a workbook that there'll be a link in the show notes that you can download that'll have all this in detail. There's more questions there for you to work through. If you feel like what I just said, you're like, oh, I think I may be doing this. It'll help you kind of create some space so that you're not being a rescuer or over-identifying with your clients. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some other root causes of what creates overwhelm for us as therapists. Take a drink of my tea. Okay, so it could be that you have not really set a clear goal for the sessions. And maybe you did a while ago, but now you've gotten to know the client and they come in and you guys kind of have a rhythm and you keep talking and you've lost track of the goal. Then over time, it can begin to feel a little overwhelming. You're lost in the weeds of their story. You're lost in the minutia of all that they're explaining and all that's happening and all that's going on. And so when we lose sight of the goal, when we lose sight of what they're there to work on and why, then we can start to get overwhelmed and lost in their story. Right? So it's really important, and I talk with my interns about this a lot, like, what's the goal? What's the goal? Revisit the goal, reestablish the goal, stay connected to what is the purpose of the time that you are there together. Now, I don't mean, we're not militant about it, and we're not like, sorry, that's not on the goal topic, we're not going to talk about that. Of course, we're humans, having human interactions with other humans, so be a human. Have those interactions, but when you're clear on what the goal is, then it's easier to not get overwhelmed in the minutia of their life and what's going on with them, and to start chasing all these bunny trails. And what happens over time when we begin doing that, then the client's like, I don't really know why I'm here. Like, what are we doing here? I'm spending a lot of money. What's happening here? And this is, they probably then are feeling some overwhelm too. Like, it begins to feel a little pointless. Like, sure, it feels good to come in and talk about all this stuff, sort of, but like, what's the point? And so then they can, I don't know, it's just really important to stay really present with the goals so that it feels intentional and your time together is directed and purposeful. And of course, like I said, you're going to have those human interactions and moments and a few side conversations. But for the most part, the sessions are about unfolding the journey to the desired outcome that your client has stated that they want. All right. Another reason we can often get overwhelmed is emotional resonance with clients. So if you have a client who comes in and has a very similar story to yours, or maybe one aspect of their story is very similar to yours, especially if it's an area you haven't really fully worked out yet, then it can be real easy to get real overwhelmed with how to help them, where to go. Because maybe it's an area where you feel stuck yourself. You feel like, let's say it's finances. So you're feeling kind of stuck financially, like you haven't made some great decisions, you're not sure what to do or how to get out of the situation you're in. And if you have a client who comes in and starts telling their story and it's very similar financially, then you can kind of have that emotional resonance, countertransference, and then it can get a little overwhelming and we are unsure what to do or how to help. So it's important and I'm going to give you some details next about kind of what to do about that and how to hold the boundaries and let the story remain being about them and just be really present with them instead of taking on that fear response that's like, I can't help them. I don't know what to do. I need to tell them what to do, or I need to tell them the next something. I need. What if I don't know what to say? Then all that is a real fear-based approach, and it's going to cause us to step out of being just the calm, present, interactive person who can hold space, and then they can have step into the response for themselves that they need. All right. Okay. So let me look at my notes really quick and make sure I covered all of that. So let's talk about some grounding techniques to do when we are in session and overwhelmed. Let's say you have a lot going on, like I've said before, in your personal life, and you realize that your client has been talking for a minute or 2 or 5, and you have been going through the checklist in your mind of what you need to do and the session's over, and you have no idea what they just said. It's happened to the best of us. Absolutely not proud of it. Wishing for sure that it could be different or that we could change it, but it definitely does happen. So let's talk about what to do whenever you kind of come back around and you're present again in session and you're needing to re-engage and recenter and resettle yourself on what to do. One tip I have is to have some micro movements. So shift your seat in your chair, cross your legs the other way. Just do something where you're shifting your body to be present with your body, to feel your body in some way. You can rub your hands on your thighs or your leg. Take your fingers and the little pads of your fingers and squeeze your thigh, squeeze the pads of your fingers to each other. Do something to get back in your body physically, to reground yourself. Run your hands through your hair. Just do something physical. Just shift so you feel a physical presence with yourself, if that makes sense. So touching, like I said, touching your legs, shifting your seat, crossing your legs a different way, touching your hair. Do something to re-engage your mind and your body back together. You can take some intentional breaths with awareness, big, deep cleansing breath. If it's appropriate, you could definitely say, hey, let's pause right here and just take a big, deep cleansing breath together, right? You can do it with your client, or you can just do it subtly with yourself while you're listening to them. And taking a pause and really just regrounding and recentering yourself in the room, in your presence with them, and then you can ask them, hey, can you say that a different way? Or ask them a clarifying question about the pieces that you did hear and just pick right back up without freaking out, without oh my God, I screwed up, or I'm not a good therapist. All that's BS that comes into our mind. and it's just meant to distract you, and you're a human being who had a human moment. Just recenter your body physically, ask a clarifying question to your client, and keep moving forward, right? That's the biggest key, is just keep moving forward. It's okay. You are not their savior. You are not going to make or break their life. We are a human being who has trained in information and tools and resources that are available to our client, but it is up to our client to use those tools and resources and apply them, understand them, and to hold their own life, to take responsibility for their own journey. We are there as consultants, so to speak, to help them and guide them. But, just like we can go to a doctor if we want to lose weight, or a nutritionist or a physical therapist or a coach in the gym, right? They can tell us all the things. They have all these trainings and tools and resources of things to do, but it's up to us to actually do them. Nobody can go to the gym for me. Nobody can lift the weights for me. Nobody can put the nutritious food in my mouth for me. I have to do all those things for myself. And the same is true with our clients. We are there as a sounding board for them. We are there as a resource for them. We're there to hold space and hold presence and teach them how to be in the presence of uncomfortable emotions without triggering, without, flying off into our fight, flight, or freeze response. But if you don't know how to do that, if you get tripped up and go off into your fight, flight, or freeze response when emotions get uncomfortable, then you have some work to do, because how can you help your clients do that if you can't do it yourself, right? So we can be uncomfortable and hold the space and have the tools. And so just remember to keep your perspective in check of who you are. You are. When I think of my clients' lives, I am one piece of their timeline. And my goal is to be the most powerful tool, resource that they've ever met. Absolutely. I'm not minimizing that in any way. I will never stop learning and growing and healing in my own life and tapping into new resources and understanding and growth, because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm evolving into my highest self. But I want for my clients, when they come in contact with me, for them to be like, this is the best investment I've ever made, because they understand that I have resources and tools and understanding that like nobody they've ever experienced before, because I've invested so heavily in all of that. That being said, I am one blip on the radar of their life. I hope that they invest in their time with me and get so much growth and transformation and healing and change for themselves as possible. But I am not healing their life. I'm not saving their life. They are doing that for themselves. They're just using me as a tool and a resource for the amount of time that I have, that they invest in their time with me. And it's nothing more than that. All right. So it's really no different than if I am going to invest in a personal trainer. I'm going to do the research and find the personal trainer with the best reputation, whom I know has invested in themselves and their craft and their capacity and their ability to really know and understand the human body, and know and understand, especially a woman's human body who's perimenopausal and, all the things. Somebody who's really invested in the phase of life that I'm in. I'm going to pay them because I know that they have tools and resources that other people just haven't invested in and don't understand. So the same is true for you, right? So you're here listening to this because you want more understanding and tools and resources. And the more you invest in yourself and you grow and you empower yourself to be a very powerful, transformative agent for others. However, you are not their savior. You're not their one and only. You're not the thing that's going to make or break them. They are the thing that's going to make or break themselves, right? And we have to stay in that mindset that it's them managing and taking care of themselves, and they're hiring you for the resources and tools that you can provide, and you're going to show up and provide them in the best, most powerful, transformative way that you know how, but for them to hold and pick up and use, not for you to do anything to or for them, right? They are going to transform. They are creating transformation for themselves. Okay, so this may be a mind shift for you. This may be something like, oh, I have fallen back into feeling like I need to take care of it. I need to, and this is part of the rescuer mindset. And when I think about being a rescuer and the rescuer mindset, for many of us, this is our first language. We grew up thinking, I need to be in sacrifice of myself for the sake of other people. And that we developed that and operated in that way because that's how we maintained connection and attachment with the community with which we were living in, our family system that we were operating in. That's the way it had to be in order to create connection, attachment, survival. And that could very well be your first language, like it was my first language. And so when we're tired, when we're overwhelmed, when we have a lot going on in our life, when we, for whatever reason, our imposter syndrome flares up, we revert back to our first language often. So this isn't something where I want any of us to feel like we're bad at what we do or we're bad therapists or healers. No, like that in and of itself is a survival mindset, is a rescuer mindset. It's more like, oh, okay, understand the situations with which I do that, and I'm going to self-correct. So if you feel like, okay, this is something I need to explore a little bit more, this is something that I need to understand a little bit more about myself and like how to really move out of this and how to shift out of feeling like I'm responsible for the people on my caseload versus I am responsible for how I show up and the tools and resources I provide, but they are ultimately responsible for their transformations. If you're wanting more support on that mindset shift and how to create it, and how to really create clarity for yourself, then I have a full workshop on this. It is called Quick Techniques to Manage Overwhelm in Stressful Sessions. And it has a 16-page workbook with it. And in that workbook, I go through not only a lot of the points I talked about today, but there's a lot of like clarifying questions to ask yourself so you can understand in what ways you might still be tripping up in session to over-identify with clients or to, not be able to set clear boundaries or be a rescuer, which creates overwhelm. Or if you are in a tough season of life and you want to know, how do I show up as my best self with all this chaos going on in my personal life? Then I have some really, the workbook has some really good grounding techniques for you. It has some, like I said before, questions to ask yourself, and it has actionable next steps for reflection and growth, which I think is really powerful. So I want to really provide you with a resource that's going to help you understand not only what's going on and why, but what to do about it. Like, what's the point of this workshop unless you know what to do about it? So some really clear, actionable steps for you so you know how to be present with people's emotion without absorbing their emotion, not getting overwhelmed by them, understanding that just your presence alone is what's going to help them. One really great actionable next step in here is, like, if somebody comes in and just unloads a ton of stuff on you, spend the first session helping them organize. Like, here's stuff from the past, here's stuff from the present, and where do you want to start? Ask them what feels most powerful for you to start. Should we start on the stuff happening here and now? Do you want to start on the stuff with the past? Allow them to find that for themselves. Empower them to tell you what they want. And they may say at first, I don't know, you decide. But no, that's them wanting you to take responsibility for their life and wanting you to be the driver and the leader. And again, initially that can feel pretty good, but we're not really helping them when we do that. We're not teaching them how to really step into an empowered place in their own life. So I hope this podcast has served you. I will have a link to the workshop in the show notes. It's only, I don't remember exactly how much it is, $22, $23, $24, something like that. It's not a super expensive investment, but it's a really powerful investment to really help you with questions to ask yourself so that you understand where you're at, and even more important than that, really actionable next steps so that you can create clarity, stay out of overwhelm in sessions with your clients, and yeah, I hope that serves you well. I will see you in the next podcast.